Welcome to the And Juliet podcast. Today, Jerry Mitchell and And Juliet choreographer Jennifer Weber talk about the power of dance in storytelling.
Jen, Jerry Mitchell here. Hit me, baby, one more time. Let's talk about your show.
Anytime.
And Juliet, I saw the show prior to the pandemic here in the UK. I was blown away. I loved everything about the show. I came out of the theater. I took a picture of the marquee at the Shaftesbury Theater, and I made a post, and I said, "Get ready, world, because this show is going to roar across all 7 continents. It's called And Juliet, and it's coming for you, and it is full out." And so, congratulations. Tell me about your experience making this incredible musical.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, it has been, to be honest, like the absolute best experience of any creative process, because this is like my dream show. You know, this is like a show that has so much choreography, so much storytelling, so much positivity, so much energy, so much love. And like all that started in the creative team and then just continued on stage.
Was this your first Broadway show? Is this your Broadway debut?
This is my Broadway debut.
Well, what a show to make a Broadway debut with. Congratulations on that, too.
Thank you.
It's
amazing.
And
I never, because I sort of started as a choreographer, I was not a dancer first. So I didn't have like a dance career. I didn't have a career as like an assistant who became an associate. So I just sort of started.
Like me, I had to work my ass up 17 years to get to Broadway. And you just bust the doors down with And Juliet.
I mean, I definitely worked on all different things to like lead myself to this point, but like, you know, to just sort of get thrown into the world of Broadway with such a massive show. It's just like, wow, like so much to learn.
Well, tell me a little bit about your personal style. I think I know what it is, but tell me what you think your personal style is.
I mean, when people ask me, like, what is my personal style, like, I always think of myself as a storyteller. And, like, I think of storytelling as my style, you know, like that I sort of, you know, look at what is needed for this moment, for this character, for this group. What can we do to empower the cast to tell the story? And that's sort of where I sort of start everything, is from that place of like, how do I empower people to feel amazing, to be able to communicate what we want them to communicate in this moment?
Okay, so I, as a choreographer watching your work, when I look at And Juliet, I feel it is extremely well based in hip-hop style, right? I mean, Broadway hip-hop, your style hip-hop, whatever you want to call it. It's certainly got a more modern take and a more hip-hop style than most Broadway shows you see. So just thinking of that, did that come to you because of the music? How did you get your vocabulary of steps in which you were going to tell your story?
I mean, you know, my background as a dancer and as a choreographer was really coming from hip hop. And I think there's like such an interesting sort of like parallel in hip hop and in theater, because like hip hop is really comes like from the people and as a movement of communication and character. If you think about like the roots of hip hop in the beginning and this vocabulary that people were using to like give themselves a voice, and this idea that no one wanted to do the exact same move that somebody else wanted to do. They always wanted to top each other and create their own moves and like be the person who like, you know, was the spark of this whole thing.
Well, you just start the show with that exact idea, because now I've seen the show a couple of times and it never starts the same way, because there's a different actor who takes the front and center and does a different move, because they're telling their version of the story, their version of hip hop. And you watch all of these different people and it's always like, what are they going to do? Oh my God, that dancer's amazing. That dancer's amazing. You're allowing them to express themselves individually, which I also love in any musical.
Absolutely. And like, you know, I think that's what's so exciting is like when you have a cast that has such a range of movement styles within them, right? We have some people who are super hip hop. We have some people who are super musical theater. And it's like, I want to celebrate all of that in the show. You know, I don't want everyone to do every move exactly the same way. With, you know, I want people to bring their own story to it, because that's what this show is about, right? This show is about a company of players telling this story, and each player has their own perspective on everything that's happening on the stage. And you know, also each player has all their own like movement style that they're like putting on top of everything that I'm giving them movement wise. Yeah. And that's what's so magical, is that like, because what they're giving to each person is authentic to that person, that I think that that's what makes the energy just explode. It's like no one's trying to be someone else.
You definitely embrace that with your choreography and also with your casting of the show, because I've seen it now with a couple different casts, and you know, it's so individual. So I'm going to ask you a question that I get asked as a choreographer all the time, and I always have a terrible answer for it, but I'm going to see what you have to say. In the show, and Juliet, tell me, what was your favorite number to choreograph?
There is something that I feel about Roar that is so unique. And it's something that like, I remember the very first day when I was choreographing Roar, and I had an amazing skeleton crew in New York of some of my best friends who are helping me out. And we just started like with this movement that's like, it's not really a move, it's more like a feeling. And it just started building, and it's like the way that movement feels, and the way that movement then generated the entire number of Roar, and where that number sort of like sits in the show. And then the way that the cast feels while doing Roar, like it makes me so emotional just like thinking about it, because it's like, it's all about finding your own strength and finding your own voice, because that's what happens in that moment in the show. Juliet is really like, she's telling Shakespeare, I'm not done. I've got more to say, and I'm going to say it myself, and this is how I'm going to say it. And then we explode that feeling literally from Juliet into a diamond that explodes with more and more and more people building. And then the whole stage is like, we just take over, and you really feel the individuality of each of the players and how they connect to Juliet, and how they have their own story.
Okay, Jen, in Roar, I remember specifically watching one beat of your choreography, and it reminded me of something that I tried to accomplish with You Can't Stop the Beat in Hairspray. I tried to make the steps simplistic enough that anyone in the audience, my grandmother, could come to the show and think, I can do those steps, and start joining in. I'm moving my hands back and forth, and I'm on a diagonal. And it started with one person, and then it was two, and it built into this power wedge that just, you couldn't ignore it. Everybody could do it. And you built it like that, so it made us in the audience believe we could do it too. Was that your intention?
That was 100% my intention. It's kind of funny, because this idea of, you know, I call it a point dance because that's what it's called in K-pop. And K-pop is sort of known for creating these point dances, these sort of dances that everyone in the audience, all the fans, the super fans of the different boy bands and girl bands, they learn these dances, they create videos of these dances, they post the videos. It sort of becomes this like culture of a way of sort of like communicating between like the K-pop group and like their fans, is like through choreography. So having spent a ton of time researching and studying K-pop, you know, this was one of my takeaways that I thought would be so successful in this particular moment with Roar, and with this very simple sort of gestural choreography that the whole audience could pick up on. Because there's something, you know, in the same way that the K-pop fans want to feel like connected to their favorite idol group, I felt the audience wanted to feel this connection to Juliet and the players, and the way to bridge that gap was through this movement.
It gives everybody in the audience that emotion.
Yeah.
It just washes over the audience. I always say it's like a tsunami of love. You send it out and everybody gets it. Here's another question for you, because I think you did this in such a brilliant way in the show, both times I've seen the show here in the UK and in America, is principals who have to dance, who aren't necessarily dancers. And that is a really, people forget that choreographers, it's easy to choreograph on a dancer who can do your steps.
Yes.
But your job also is to make the principals look like they know what they're doing. And a great choreographer, Michael Bennett, once said to me, if they don't look good, you don't look good, so you better change your step. So my question for you is, as you were originally creating it here in London, did you take that into account for each principal? Did you craft the steps to fit the person, the actor who had to play the part? That must have been part of your process.
Absolutely. And to be honest, it's one of the parts of the process I like the most,
Great.
I find that collaboration, working with the principals one-on-one, to just be so interesting, because they think differently than we think about choreography. Like, they think about the movement, in a different way. And sometimes they're kind of nervous about it. Like the amount of times I've had people come up to me and be like, I'm not a dancer, and I'm like, well, you're in a musical, so you're gonna be dancing,
Yeah.
But I love that. And I love working with them and cracking it open for them and having them find their voice and their character's voice. And I think in Juliet, it's especially with the boy band number and having all those principals who are in the boy band, that is a lot of choreo,
What I loved about what I saw in your work was I saw actors dancing.
Yeah.
And, that was another great lesson that I learned from Jerome Robbins. He said, I would rather watch an actor dance than a dancer try to act.
Yeah.
And what he meant was, it's all storytelling, as you said earlier. It's all about storytelling. So those people who tell the stories, the actors on stage, and you want that in your principals, but you also want it in your ensemble. Those actors are really what are going to sell your moves.
I think at first the principals are nervous, and then by the time we get a week or two into rehearsal, they're on the side being try to learn some freestyle
practice.
from some of the other dancers. And it's just, it's all about the environment. I think that's what's so important about making a show, is creating a great environment in which people feel free to take chances.
Yeah.
And people
absolutely.
feel free to make mistakes and to be bad before they're good, and that's something I'm so proud of our company and our team, our creative team of Juliet, is just continuing to create these magical environments where it doesn't matter what your background is, it just matters where your heart is. And if your heart is open, you could come at this material and find your way in, because I think it's all in Max's music. That Max is all heart.
Do you listen to the music, and does the music inspire? Obviously, it must inspire your steps and your storytelling. I get a song for a score from Cyndi Lauper or whoever I'm working with, and I listen to it and I listen to it and I listen to it until pictures form in my head, and then I start to try to get those pictures out on bodies. Is that how you operate, or do you do it differently?
I think it really depends on what the number is, and where we're sort of at. Sometimes I might start with a concept, or I might start with a visual, or I might start with a breakdown. It really depends, But the thing about this show in particular is, I didn't really do the same amount of listening because I knew all these songs, So I didn't really need to I almost felt like I was a step ahead,
Right.
Because I had danced to those songs so many times, whether just at a party or, playing them in warm-ups of classes, or, these are songs you in your bones,
Yeah.
So it was more visual and narrative. And then for me, the moves, that's sort of the part that I find I don't really know how it happens. What makes me choose this move or that move, to go right, to go left, to hit this a pocket, to hit this a, sharp, it's like when it happens just like it happens, and then when I look back, I have no idea how it happened. do you ever feel like that? Like just
absolutely. I sometimes see a number and it's finished and I go, how did that ever happen? How did it come together? I remember making the pieces, but it's almost like you're living it. You're so in it when you're creating it that the best thing you can do as a creator is create it and don't judge it. Wait until it's a finished product and then step back and do your editing. But so many creatives make a mistake. They try to edit before they finish. Finish first and then edit. And I find it frees you a little bit when you don't put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, because sometimes it's the hardest part is just picking that first step, right? Like I remember certain things I choreographed like by myself in my apartment in front of a mirror, and it's okay. I try 1, 2, 3, and 4. No, that doesn't feel right. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and it's just like how you even get to those first couple steps and to not judge it and to let it be the thing, because ultimately what that step is like only one tiny piece of the whole picture and the whole visual, and whether it was right or left, which felt so important to you and you're like by yourself in your room, is like not actually important.
So if you could say in & Juliet, obviously the show basically dances from the first moment to the last moment. It just never stops moving, which also kudos to you for all of that, because it really is beautiful the way you do it. But was there ever anything that really any place you got stuck, or it was like, oh my God, how am I going to solve that?
There's definitely like certain moments in the show that, I choreographed them the first time, and that's pretty much what's on stage now. And then there's other scenes that we have worked on and like changed. And I think one of the ones that's always been sort of a challenge for us was Confident, because it comes, it's the next like big number after Blow, which is such a massive number. And then Confident is also like a very big song, but we needed the storytelling to be very different than in Blow, and to really focus on the relationship between Juliet and Francois and how we can like follow that journey. And also we use a lot of the rotating stage in that number. So it's like, that's always like the big challenge, is when you're using that element that you don't necessarily have in rehearsal, and it's like such a big piece of the number. Is like the stage is moving and there's all these like big pieces of furniture. And then the song is also like really, really big, but we need the number to feel really almost like intimate to this place where we are in the story. And so I think that's one of the numbers that we sort of changed. And now I feel so good about it. I feel like it's so clear.
This is before Francois really has his time with May.
Yes.
Yeah.
They sort of bump into each other in Blow,
and then
but they don't really reconnect till Kiss the Girl. So this is like that in between. And I think both Luke and I felt like the original version of it wasn't quite right, and that the second version of it wasn't quite right, and then we finally, I think, got it right finally for Broadway after after the Manchester, London, and Toronto versions. I think we got it right for Broadway.
Well, that's the great thing about a musical, is that it's never done. Every time you revisit it, even in all the productions you'll find something that you wanna change. But it's already a hit, right?
Yep.
So anything you do now is just adding to that hit status. You just keep making it better and better and better.
It's so true.
Everything can be made better.
Yes.
There's never, oh my God, it's perfect, let's spray paint it and leave it. That just never happens. Because theater's about live people, and you have different actors, so you have to be open to making it work.
And that's what's exciting, and of course, you're totally right. In Australia, we made a couple little changes that I'm like, oh, I wish I discovered that earlier, and they could be so small, it could be as small as 4 counts, but you feel it. You just feel this thing where you're like, oh, and that's so cool about making theater is that you do get to keep growing and you get to keep learning and you get to keep seeing it fresh, because you're bringing a whole new fresh group of humans together. One
last question I have for you. The work that you did is so spectacular and it's so powerful movement. And how was it to create it and yet become such a huge success during this crazy time we've all been through in this pandemic? And having, for you as a choreographer, as I've experienced, having to make sure you've got backups waiting off stage who can come on and deliver exactly like the people who are on stage, and even more than usual now because of the COVID stuff. We used to have 2 swings, maybe 4. Now we've got 8. And they all have to be trained and they all have to be ready to go into all the roles.
I mean, we are so lucky to have such an incredible group of swings, of dance captains, of associates. It takes a village. And I think, I'm so grateful to the swings in our company and our dance captains. Like, they work so hard and they're such unicorns. They're just magical unicorns who can do all these things. And something I think is really exciting about Juliet is, all of our swings, they have character names, they have their own costumes, they have certain moments that they do when they're on, they do their version of that moment. So like I was able to choreograph multiple versions of that opening solo because each of the swings have their own version of that solo, because it's not about everyone doing it the same. Like I said, it's about everyone doing it their own way. And I think our show really, really celebrates those people. I certainly celebrate those people, but I think as a show, as a company, we really celebrate those people because theater would be nothing without them. And when you find those people, it's like you just have to hold on to them and make them know how special they really are, because sometimes I think it's hard for them because they don't always get to do all the big press hits or there's they might not be on stage on opening night, and I think it's really hard, but we brought all of our swings out on opening, to join in Can't Stop the Feeling and to celebrate them.
Well, it really shows the energy the other night when I went to see the show in New York was, off the charts. The cast was having a ball, and you feel that in the audience. And so congratulations on a huge success. Wishing you continued success and a fabulous spring season in New York and beyond. And it's lovely to meet you and chat about choreography.
Absolutely. My favorite topic. It's so great. It's so great to get to talk to you. I mean, I've watched your work for quite a bit of time, and it's just, it's so impressive. All like the amazing shows you've made and the amazing work you've created and your ability to, have gone through being a dancer to an associate to choreographer to director choreographer. Like it's so inspiring because that's, something I hope that I could have that kind of career as we keep moving.
You are well on your way. Well on your way. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the And Juliet podcast. Join us next time when Kenny Leon talks to And Juliet director Luke Shepard.